It's back to school season, and I know that you see working, going to school full time, being in a relationship, having kids, trying to also focus on your personal growth and your personal development and your health, and all of these things as a problem and an obstacle when the new semester starts. And I just don't see it that way, which is why during this episode of She Rocks at College Live, I'm going to be talking about how to think about your time differently, especially if you're a student who feels like their life is just crazy all of the time. My goal with this is that any student in any life circumstance is study to work to live a life, because it is possible. It's just the way that you're used to thinking about managing your time needs to shift. It needs to change. My name is Clarissa. I'm the life coach for college women. And when I went to nursing school, I was working full time. I was in a full-time nursing program. I was in a relationship with my boyfriend at the time. He's now my husband. I was creating regular YouTube videos. And I had a life. I took every Sunday off of college, every Sunday off of studying. How is that possible when I had so much going on? How is it possible when my schedule for work changed every single week, right? I worked 2 jobs. I worked at a call center and I worked in the restaurant industry while I was in school. Combined, both of those jobs were 30 to 40 hours while I was in a full-time program, with clinical hours that changed every single semester, a schedule that changed every single semester. How did I make it work when my life at the time was crazy? That's the conversation that we're going to have tonight. So here is the way that I have always looked at and approached study, and approached managing my time and planning out my week and studying consistently, even when my life was crazy. So the first thing is that I didn't make my life circumstances a problem. I didn't make the amount of time that I had or didn't have to study a problem. Because here is the reality and the truth, and I'm just going to say it frankly. You're just not that special. Your life isn't that special. Having to manage multiple things going on in your life, that is just life. The norm is that life is crazy. The norm is that things happen and schedules need to change and shift and be adjusted. That is just life. So what are you going to do about it? How are you going to work with it? Because when you think in your mind that it's a problem, and that it somehow impedes you from getting the grades it is that you desire, from having the time it is that you want to, let's say, work on your health and fitness, or to be present with your kids, with your family, with your partner, or to date if that's like another life goal it is that you have while you're in college. When you make the amount of time that you have and the things that you want to spend time on a problem, what you're focused on is the thought that it's not possible to make it work. And when you're focused on the idea that it's not possible, or that it's going to be hard, or that you're going to have to give up things, you don't focus on what the actual problem is, which is learning how to make it work. Because life is what it is. Your life circumstances are what they are. What are you going to do about it? How are you going to still earn the grades it is that you want, even when life is crazy, because it always is, right? So let's talk about that, okay? So the first thing that I want to address is this idea of consistency. Y'all, like, I don't know who is telling this lie, but consistency with studying doesn't mean that you study every single day. Can we just be real about this? Consistently studying doesn't mean that you're studying every single day. Doesn't mean that. It just means that you're studying when you said that you wanted to study. That's all it means, right? The example that I love to give my students is this. I go to the dentist consistently. Okay, the recommended amount is twice a year. I go twice a year. I'm consistent with going to the dentist. I create YouTube videos, but I don't create a YouTube video every single week, but I have been consistent on YouTube for 7 years. I've made at least one video every single year. I'm consistent on YouTube. I don't go to the gym every single day, but for the past 2 years, I've gone to the gym consistently. I've gone more often than not. This word consistently just means whatever you want it to mean. When I was in my nursing program and working full-time and going to clinicals and doing all of these things, consistency to me meant, did I accomplish what I wanted to accomplish that week, right? Was I on top of my assignments? Now, sometimes that looked like I studied every Tuesday and Thursday. Sometimes that looked like I had to move things around and I studied everything that needed to be studied that week on Saturday. I blocked off that time. But consistently to me just meant that I was staying on top of my readings. I was staying with the lectures. Consistently doesn't mean you're studying every single day. It doesn't mean that you're studying for a certain amount of hours. It means whatever you want it to mean. And the definition that I often will provide to my students that work with me, that hire me as their life coach for college, that are a part of my program, Educated the Art of Becoming a Good Student, is it's more often than not, right? You're doing something over a period of time. That's what consistency means. That's all it means. So I wanted to say that because I have so many students who freak out about the fact that they're not studying all of the time. But who says that you have to in order to achieve the goals it is that you have for yourself? You don't have to study every single day to get an A. The amount of time and how often you study isn't what creates the A. What creates the A is whether or not you understood and retained the information. And that could happen in a 7-hour study session, 1 day a week. That could happen in an hour study session spread out over 7 days. It can look like you cramming. It can look like a multitude of things, because what creates the retention is how you study. It's not when you study. It's not the amount of time that you study. It's how you study. So this brings me to my next point, right? Hi, Marianne. Hi, Mickey. So this brings me to my next point, right? Because on top of students making it a problem that they have to work and that they have other things going on in their life, you're not focused on how to make it work for you. The reality is you may only have 5 hours a week to dedicate to studying. So what do you need to focus on in those 5 hours to ensure that you're learning, understanding, and retaining the information in a way that when you get asked a question on it on an exam, you're able to think through to the correct answer? How can you use those 5 hours this week to learn, understand, and retain the information so that if you get assigned a paper, you're able to figure out what you want to write about? You understand how the articles that you've been reading in the class or the textbook or the whatever other reading assignments it is that you're giving, you're able to take that information and articulate a well-formed thesis with examples and backed up research and all of those things. When you make the amount of time that you have every single week a problem, you focus on the wrong thing. It's like the wrong question to ask yourself is, how do I balance all of this? A better question would be, This is all of the things that I'm choosing to do this semester. This is what my life looks like. And this is how much time I have every single week that I can dedicate and that I'm choosing to dedicate to studying. So if my goal is to have A's and B's in all of the classes, how do I need to structure my study time to create that result? That's what you really want to be thinking about. I have so many videos on this YouTube channel on time blocking and building out a schedule. And one of the things that I want to do is I want to give you what my scheduling structure is. Now, this is the exact structure that I give to the students who work with me. This is the exact structure that I teach inside of my program, Educated the Art of Becoming a Good Student. And I'm going to walk you through this right now because managing your time is really simple. It's just making decisions about your time. It's plugging things into a calendar. Every single one of you knows how to do that. That's not what you struggle with, right? When you say, I'm struggling with balancing everything, it's not that you don't like know how to figure out what time of the week and what day of the week you're going to be doing certain things. You know how to do that. It's that when it comes down to actually sitting down to do it, you're not, right? You're procrastinating, and that causes you to have to adjust your schedule. And when you have to adjust your schedule, you make it mean it's not enough time. You make it mean I'm never going to be able to get this done. You make it mean this is too much work. You make it mean a bunch of things that it doesn't have to mean. But the act of planning out your week and your schedule, you know how to do. And it's not even that it's a problem that you only have 10 hours a week after you go to work and drive your kids to and from different places and go to the gym and hang out with people. It's that you feel like those 10 hours aren't enough time. And the only reason why you feel like those 10 hours aren't enough time is because you're not focused on what it is that you're trying to get out of that study time. And this is the reason why I always say succeeding in college is really simple. You have to learn how to create an effective study plan, right? You have to know what you're doing to study. Okay? Studying are the actions that you take to help your brain do what it already knows how to do, which is learn shit. Your brain has come pre-programmed to learn things. The proof of this is your entire life. The fact that you learned how to walk and talk and brush your teeth is proof that your brain has the ability to learn. Okay? That's just a given fact. You're going to learn things. What most of us freak out about, and the reason why we get so obsessed with studying consistently and having the time to study, is because we're trying to retain and understand the content that we're learning in class. And we think that if we have more time, that time is what is going to create the retention and the understanding. That's not how the brain works. What creates retention and understanding in the brain is how you think about the content that you're being tested on in your courses. So if you were to spend the time helping your brain understand why this content is important, how you're going to be tested on it, how the professor wants you to think about the content, etc., you'll know what to do with your study time. You'll know how to maximize and optimize your study time. And then it doesn't matter how much time you have, because you'll learn how to make it work, because you know what it is that you need to focus on. So let me just break down what it looks like to manage your time when your life is crazy. You ready for it? Okay, you're going to look at your calendar. And in your calendar, whether it's a paper planner or a digital planner, doesn't matter. Don't get hung up on that. It's the wrong question to ask yourself. It really doesn't matter. You're going to put in everything that is set in stone. Okay? This means that thing is happening whether you're there or not. Okay? Some examples of things that are set in stone are your class schedule, especially if it's a synchronous course. The second, another example of things that are set in stone, your work schedule. Got to be there. Certain date and certain time. Appointments are things that are set in stone. Meetings are things that are set in stone. Any of your kids' events, those are things that are set in stone. Okay? So you want to plug that into your calendar. That goes in first. The next thing that goes in your calendar are all of the things that you want to do and that you want to spend time on, including rest, right? If you want to have time to live, you have to plan for the time to live. It's not just you're not going to just have time left over. Okay, time will be used up. So you want to decide ahead of time how you're going to use it up. So put in all the stuff that's set in stone. Next step is decide when you're going to rest. Decide when your study free time is going to be. Decide when you're going to go to the gym. Decide when you're going to eat, sleep, poop. Put in that rest time. This is how I teach my students to build out their schedule so that they do have time to study, to work, and to rest. And then once that is in your schedule, the time that is left over, that is your study time. Some of you, when you go through this exercise, you're going to have a lot of time to study. A lot of hours open to studying. Others of you, you're going to find that you have a little less time than you would like. And you're going to freak out. And that's normal. And the reason why you're freaking out is because you're thinking to yourself, that's not enough time. How am I going to get through all of these readings? How am I going to have time to do the homework? How am I going to have time to write this paper? How am I going to have time to quiz and recall? How am I going to have time to do everything that I think that I need to do in order to help myself learn this material? But what you're forgetting is that lecture counts as studying when you know how to use lecture correctly. What you're forgetting is that it's not how much time you study that creates good grades. It's how you study that creates good grades. And when you focus on the how, when you focus on really understanding how your brain learns, right? You're not spinning your wheels. You're able to get in, do what needs to be done, understand that yes, I have this material retained, understood, and learned, and bounce. That's how I teach my students how to study. Because we focus on the how. We focus on effectiveness. And once you are effective, meaning that the actions that you're taking during the time that you have to study leads to the grades it is that you want, we can get fancy and get efficient. Meaning we can start eliminating things, we can start condensing things, we can start noticing patterns and themes, which will cut down on time. But the first thing that has to happen to get to this point is you have to not make your life circumstances a problem. You have to not make the amount of time that you have to study every week a problem. It is not an obstacle. It's data. It's not a problem. It's just information. It's just the facts, right? If you have a slice of pizza and there are 3 people and you guys all want to eat, The options are you give one slice to a person and the other two don't eat. Or if you want to make sure that everybody eats, you have to figure out what you're going to do with this one slice to make sure that everybody eats. So the solution is we're going to cut it up into 3 pieces. This one piece of pie is going to get cut up into 3 pieces. Everyone's going to get a little bit. It's just math. It's just data. It's just the facts. If you have 10 hours to study every week, your job is to figure out what are you gonna do with those 10 hours to ensure that you learn, understand, and retain the content. What are you gonna do with those 10 hours to ensure that your paper is written? What are you gonna do with those 10 hours to ensure that your reading gets done? What are you going to do with those 10 hours to ensure that your homework gets done? Those are the types of questions that you want to be asking yourself, right? And there are going to be some weeks where life happens. You get sick. Something pops up in your life where you have to move things around. And when that happens, you have to not make it a problem. You have to just look at your week and make decisions. And understand why you're making those decisions and get behind those decisions and like your decisions and like the reason why you're making those decisions. And that's really the issue. You make the amount of time that you have a problem. And here's what I mean when I say a problem. You make it mean things it does not mean. You tell yourself that just because you only have 2 days a week to study, that you'll never be able to pass a class. You tell yourself that because you aren't just focused on school all of the time, that means that you're never going to be successful and you should just drop the class. You tell yourself that because you had to adjust your schedule and move things around, or you didn't start studying when you said that you were going to study, that means that your whole schedule needs to be thrown out and nothing's ever going to work and it's not good enough, and insert the story that you tell yourself. And when you are so focused on the problem, on the meaning that you give it, you're not focused on finding a solution. When you're spinning out in the problem and why is this happening to me and why can't my life be different and why is this always the case and I knew it and I'm not good enough and this isn't, when you're there, you're not over here where the solution is. The reason why I said at the beginning of this call is that I just don't see it as an obstacle and as a problem, is because this is just life. In life, shit happens. In life, we have lots of things that we want to spend time on. In life, we work and we have kids and we have boyfriends and we have friends we want to spend time with and we have family we want to spend time with and we have shows we want to watch and we have hobbies we want to do. And so if that is what we're playing with, if that is the reality, if those are the facts, what are we doing? How are we working with all of these things? Those are the questions that I want you to be thinking about and asking yourself around being consistent with studying, even when life is crazy. Life being crazy is the norm. It's not the exception. It is the rule. It's just the way that it is. So what? What are we doing? How are we handling it? How are we working with it? For some of you, right, if you're working a lot, if you have a lot of things going on with your family, your kids are in a million events, and maybe you don't have the support it is that you want, and you're managing the household and doing all these things, and you're in school full time, and there's homework, and there's reading to be done, and there's papers to be written, and there's exams to study for. And you have like 5 hours of focused time to dedicate to these things. We have to start getting creative. Well, I'm already going to be in lecture. So how can I make the most out of lecture so that I need less time outside of lecture to understand and retain this information? I teach this to my students, by the way. I teach prepping and priming, getting ready to make the most out of lecture so that the time outside of lecture is more like a review. It's more like filling in the gaps. But that's one way that you can work around having limited time to study. Another way that you can get around having limited time to study is learning how your brain learns, so that you focus on the actions that are going to yield the highest amount of understanding and retention. When you understand how your brain learns, you can focus on just those actions, just those steps that create the highest amount of retention and understanding, which means you need less time. This is what I mean when I say create an effective study plan. Learn how your brain learns and use it to your advantage. When you understand what is required to get the information in your brain and get your brain to store it in long-term memory and make the connections it needs to make so that when you get asked a question, you're able to pull it out and answer the question, you have to understand how your brain learns. When you understand that, you know, oh, so in this class, what I want to focus on is asking myself these types of questions when I'm reading. And I want to make sure that when I'm in lecture, I'm thinking about how this compares and contrasts. And I'm really paying attention to the examples that the professor is giving. And that I'm really understanding how those examples relate to what we were reading the night before. This process of thinking about the material, thinking about what's important, thinking about your time, thinking about solving for problems, creating contingencies for yourself. If this happens, here's what I'm going to do. If I have to move this around, then I'm going to not go to this place at this time. Building in buffer time. Right? I have a student inside of my program right now who has flare-ups because she has an autoimmune disease and she has no idea when she's going to have a flare-up. And at the beginning of our work together, we've been working together now for 2 years, going on 3, since she started college. It was a problem. She's like, I don't know how to plan around this. And now she just does. She gives herself ample amount of time to get started on things because she knows that at some point in there, she's going to have days where she can't do anything because of her flare-ups. And it's not a problem because she's planned ahead of time that this is going to happen. Right? This is the way that you need to start thinking about solving time problems. This is how it doesn't matter if you work 75,000 hours. You learn how to work with it. So what I want to do right now is, hi LaBelle, thank you for being here. Mickey says, and that's where creating the questions in prep and prime comes in. Yes, right? Taking the time to really like assess your situation. My computer's gonna die. I just have to plug it in. To look at what you're dealing with and not try to change what you're dealing with, because oftentimes we can't. Our circumstances are what they are. Our situation is what it is. The time that we have is the time that we have. So how are we going to optimize it? What are we going to do within that time? When you start allowing yourself to ask your brain these types of questions, I promise you, your brain will come up with the solution. And you're going to try it and test it out. You're going to commit to it, commit to following it at least 80% of the time, more often than not. And then you're going to assess, okay, what worked this week, right? What was everything that I wanted to get done? Did it get done? Yes, it did. Okay, great. What helped me to get it done? If the answer is no, okay, what got in the way? What was the obstacle? All right, so I understand now. Okay, what am I going to do next week? What am I going to put in place so that if that happens again, I don't fall behind? What am I going to put in place so that if that happens again, I'm still doing the actions that help me to get the grade it is that I want? Most students don't take the time to be this close to themselves, to pause and really look and be intentional. You're just trying to run away from the feeling. It feels bad to be overwhelmed. It feels bad to feel inadequate. It feels bad to feel anxious. And what you're doing is you're trying to run from the feeling and run from the situation and just get it to stop. That doesn't solve for the problem, which is why the pattern repeats, and then you develop and create the story that you're not good at managing your time, and that you're not somebody who's consistent, and that you're a procrastinator, when that's not true. Inability to follow through has nothing to do, it's like not a character flaw. It's not a morality issue. There's nothing wrong with you. It's just there are things in the way that you haven't taken the time to figure out what's going to create the way. And this is why I say that many students, you hyper focus on like the wrong things. You hyper focus on making things mean things that they don't mean, instead of just like looking, okay, these are just the facts. This just is what it is. What do I want to do about it? How do I want to relate to it? How do I want to change it? How do I want to shift it? How do I want to work with it? A lot of the times it's just accepting that this is your life. Cool. How am I still going to make this happen? If I can't change my schedule, if I can't change my hours at work, if I can't create more time because like this is just it, what needs to shift? What needs to change? How do I need to approach this? How do I need to make the most out of office hours? How do I need to make the most out of lecture? How do I need to make the most out of these 10 hours? That's how I want you to be thinking. That is the point of this video, is I want to shift the way that you're thinking. I want to get you asking yourself better questions that don't have you spinning out, repeating the same pattern semester after semester after semester after semester. Like, I want you to change and interrupt those patterns, and that's going to take you thinking differently. That's going to take you leaning into the problem instead of running away from it. It's going to take you asking your brain, how can we make this work? Instead of just deciding that it's not going to work. Well, if I had to make this work, and if I only had 2 hours to study to pass this class, what would I do? What would I focus on? What am I doing that I don't need to be doing, but I think I need to be doing it because of X, Y, and Z? What am I doing that's not actually creating the A's? Is there anything that I can cut back? Is there anything that I can get rid of? Do I need to be looking at watching the lecture and reading the textbook? Can I just focus on one? If that's true, what would I do to make that possible? So there's like so many of you on right now. I want you to be honest. How many of you take the time to actually do this? To ask yourself these questions, to think like this? In the chat, let me know. By the way, it's not your fault if the answer is never. We don't get taught these skills. This is why my company exists. This is why my program, Educated the Art of Becoming a Good Student, exists. Because these are all of the things that I had to learn. These are all of the skills that I had to acquire and practice and get good at in order to go from failing out of 7 classes to graduating with honors while working full-time and going to school full-time and maintaining a relationship and building the beginnings of this life coaching company for college women. This is years of research, years of practice, years of trial and error, years of, I don't even know how many books I've read at this point on time management and studying and effectiveness and productivity and all of these things. And the theme across all of them is you got to shift your thinking, right? And so LVED6 says, I never realized there was a choice. Most of us don't. And it's because we don't take the time to question what is real for us, what is true for us, what it is that we want to create. The validity in things, why we're choosing certain things. Right? We say to ourselves, this is taking too long. According to who? What study did you read that said this is how long it should take you to read? What rule book did you find in your college or university or in this class that said that this is how much time it should take you to get through a problem set? The last time I checked, you're not being tested on how fast you can do things in college. Right? Am I wrong about that? If I am, I'm sorry. I didn't know that you were being tested on how quickly you could get through it. I didn't know that was the goal. I thought the goal was to learn something. Right? So can you focus on what it takes to learn it? Can you focus on the goal of learning it? And not how long it's taking you. This is revolutionary. I know for many of you. It's a breath of fresh air. It's thinking about college and university and succeeding in it in an entirely different way than what we have been taught. But, or I should say, and the students who are succeeding, this is the approach that they're taking. This is what it looks like to make it work for you. And all I'm talking about tonight are skill sets that you can learn, and your brain is amazing at learning. The proof of it is you learned how to find this YouTube channel, and you learned how to apply for a job, and you learned how to walk and talk and brush your teeth, and how to apply for college, and how to buy books at college, and how to drive a car. The one thing you're already good at is learning. Now, the thing about the brain is that the brain only keeps information around that it finds useful. Right? So you have to learn how to work with your brain. How can you make the material that you're learning useful and meaningful for your brain so that it can retain it, keep it around, so that when you need to access it on an exam or a paper or a discussion or a presentation, that information is there. That all that is effective study planning. All that is learning how your brain learns and using that to your advantage. That's a skill. You can learn it. I have so many videos on this YouTube channel teaching it. I go in depth, and you can get feedback, and you can ask me a shit ton of questions about your situation in your classes when you work with me inside of my program, Educated: The Art of Becoming a Good Student. But I don't gatekeep any information. The basics of everything that I teach can be found on this channel. The reason why students decide to work with me is because they want that personalized help and support. They want to have someone there to hold them accountable. They want to have someone there to help them think through things and get out of their own way and to look at things differently and to shift their mindset and to have these tools inside of their back pocket. Because sometimes when we're in it, we don't see that we're in it, and it takes an outside perspective to say, hey, yo, you're focusing on the wrong things. You're stuck in this loop. Here, this is the pattern that you're in. You see it? So, that's going to conclude tonight's video. I know it's an entirely different type of consistency video on studying. Okay, but like, I don't do fluff information over here. I also don't do like one size fits all. Okay, we are all different, and there's so much nuance to our lives, and there's no right way to do something, and there's no like perfect study plan or perfect weekly schedule or perfect plan. It's about, what does your life look like? What are we dealing with? How are you thinking about it? Is the way that you're thinking about it helping you to get to where it is that you want to go? And if the answer is no, how can we shift that? How do we need to think about this? What do we need to put in place? And if the answer is yes, you just keep doing what you're doing. And you give yourself credit for it, and you celebrate yourself for it, and you just do the damn thing. My program, Educated: The Art of Becoming a Good Student, is still open for enrollment until September 8th. If you are interested in learning more about the program, there is a video on my YouTube channel that goes in depth into everything that you get. There's also testimonials from current and past students who have used the program to earn better grades, have more free time, to shift the relationship with school and studying and time, and graduate and live their best lives. That video is on the channel as well. If you're like skeptical or like you just want to hear about the program from other students and how they used it. But if you're interested in enrolling, you can go to sherocksatcollege.com/educated. There are payment plans available if that makes it more feasible and doable for you to enroll into the program. But what I will say is that once you're in for life, all the way up until you graduate and you don't need the program anymore. It will teach you how to create an effective study plan. It will teach you how to fit that study plan into whatever time it is that you have to study and still get the grades it is that you want. It will teach you how to learn to be consistent, to stick with it until you get the exact result it is that you desire. This program covers it all. It looks at things from every single angle and perspective and obstacle and circumstance and situation that you think makes it impossible for you to succeed. And it shows you that it's possible for you, that it's really simple, that you're overcomplicating it, and that you can learn what to do to earn better grades and have more free time. sherocksatcollege.com/educated. You are more than welcome to reach out to me if you have any questions about it. But everything you need to know is on this YouTube channel. I hope you have a great night. Bye.